James stayed at his brother's place for 3 days. 3 days of silence, 3 days of clarity, 3 days of reading and rereading those 12 messages. And here's what he realized. The messages weren't an anomaly. They were a summary. 3 years of relationship condensed into 8 hours of text. Apology, promise, blame, victimhood, repeat. That was the cycle. That was always the cycle. He just never saw it clearly until he had distance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." For 3 years, James's thoughts had been dyed with doubt, with self-blame, with the constant question, am I being too sensitive? But distance gave him new thoughts, clearer thoughts. He wasn't too sensitive, he was too patient. On the 3rd day, Rachel showed up at his brother's apartment. She found the address somehow, showed up unannounced, knocked on the door. James opened it, saw her standing there, eyes red, looking smaller than he remembered. "Can we talk?" James didn't move, didn't step aside, didn't invite her in. "You've got 5 minutes." She blinked. That was new. James had never given her a time limit on anything. "Can we at least go inside?" "No? Talk." She took a breath, started the script he'd heard 100 times. "I've been thinking about everything, about us. I know I haven't been perfect." "Stop." James cut her off. Something in him had shifted. 3 days of silence had burned away the part of him that softened every confrontation, that made excuses for her, that prioritized her comfort over his dignity. "You haven't been perfect. That's what you came here to say." "James, you humiliated me in front of your entire family, called my career a joke, laughed about it. And when I walked out, when I finally had enough, you sent me 12 messages in 8 hours that went from 'I'm sorry' to 'you're the problem.' 12 messages, Rachel," I counted. She opened her mouth. He kept going. "You want to know what I did with those 3 days? I read those messages over and over, and I realized something. That wasn't a bad night. That was our entire relationship, condensed, exposed. You tear me down, then you apologize just enough to keep me around, then you do it again, and again, and again." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. The old James would have stopped, would have softened, would have told her it was okay. The new James kept going. "Do you know what it feels like to be belittled by the person who's supposed to love you? In public, repeatedly, and then be told you're overreacting when you bring it up?" "I never said." "You said it in 100 different ways. Every time you rolled your eyes, every time you made that face when I tried to explain how I felt, every time you turned my pain into your inconvenience." Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But this wasn't James's imagination. This was documented, pattern after pattern, year after year. "I'm not crazy, Rachel. I'm not too sensitive. I'm not dramatic. I trusted my gut for 3 years and kept telling myself I was wrong. But I wasn't wrong. I was just too afraid to do anything about it." She was crying now, full tears. "James, please. I love you." He felt it hit. The old pull, the instinct to fix it, to hold her, to make the tears stop. But Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." James had held this in for 3 years. Every word, every feeling, every moment she made him feel small, and he was about to let it all out. If you want to hear what he said, hit the like button right now. I'll wait. Good. Here's what James said. "You love me? Then why do you talk to me like you hate me? Why do you save your worst comments for when we're around other people? Why do you make me feel small and then act confused when I pull away? I don't know. That's not good enough. I know. She stood there, tears running. No defense, no counterattack. And James realized something. In 3 years, he'd never unloaded on her like this. He'd always measured his words, controlled his tone, protected her feelings while she shredded his. But now, the truth was out. Brutal, unfiltered, and she was still standing there. She wasn't running, wasn't flipping it back on him, wasn't pulling the victim card. She was just absorbing it. I called my sister, she said quietly, told her what happened, what I said at dinner, what I've been saying for years. She wiped her face. She didn't defend me. She asked me why I do it, and I didn't have an answer. Epictetus taught, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." For 3 years, Rachel thought she knew that James was too sensitive, knew that her jokes were harmless, knew that she was the reasonable one. But something cracked. "I don't know why I tear you down," she said. "I thought it was just how we were, how couples talk. But it's not a joke if you're the only one laughing. You said that once. I didn't listen." James watched her, carefully. He'd seen tears before, heard promises before, watched the performance of remorse evaporate the moment she felt safe again. But this felt different. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, wasn't making promises, wasn't even asking him to come back. She was just sitting in the wreckage, finally seeing what she'd built. "I don't know if I can fix this," she said. "I don't know if I can fix me, but I don't want to be this person anymore. Not for you, for me, because I don't like who I've been." Seneca wrote, "The first step toward change is awareness. The second step is acceptance." James had never seen Rachel reach the first step before. Not really. But one moment of clarity in a parking lot doesn't undo 3 years of damage. "I hear you," James said. "And maybe this is real. Maybe something actually shifted. But I've heard sorry before. I've heard I'll change before. And I've watched it disappear the moment things got comfortable again." She nodded. "I'm not coming back," he said. "Not now. Maybe not ever, because I don't trust words anymore. I don't trust tears. I don't trust promises made after someone finally feels the consequences of their actions." She didn't argue. That was new. "Okay," she said. One word. And somehow it said more than 3 years of apologies. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." James had waited for Rachel to argue about what a good partner should be, to explain, to justify, to negotiate. But she didn't. She just accepted the consequence. She turned, walked to her car, got in, drove away. And James stood there, watching her leave, feeling something he hadn't expected. Not hope. Hope was too dangerous. But curiosity. What if this was real? What if the brutal truth finally spoken, finally heard, was the thing that broke through? Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." James wasn't going to waste any more time on promises, on potential, on words. But he also couldn't pretend he didn't see what just happened. Something cracked in Rachel. Whether it was real, whether it would last, remained to be seen. He would watch, from a distance, not with hope, with discernment. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." If Rachel wanted back in his life, she wouldn't explain her change. She would have to embody it, consistently, over time, without guarantees, without his attention as a reward. She would have to become different. Not for him, for herself. And only then, maybe, would he consider what that might mean. James went back inside, sat on his brother's couch. "You okay?" "Yeah, I think so. You let her have it? Everything I should have said 3 years ago. How'd it feel?" James thought about it. "Like I finally stopped protecting someone who never protected me." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look back over the past, with its changing empires that rose and fell, and you can foresee the future too." James looked back, saw the empire he'd built with Rachel, saw how it rose on hope and fell on disrespect. But now there was something new, a crack in the foundation of who she'd been. Words he'd never said finally spoken, a glimpse of awareness he'd never seen from her before. Was it enough? He didn't know. Would it last? He didn't know. Was he going back? Not on words, not on one breakdown in a parking lot, but he would watch, and time would tell. That's not the end of James's story, and maybe it's not the end of Rachel's either. If you've ever had 3 years of truth bottled up inside you and finally let it out, you know this moment. The question isn't whether she heard you. The question is whether she'll do anything about it. Not with words, with action. Over time, without guarantees. This was part 5. But it's not the finale. James's story continues, and so does Rachel's. If you want to see what happens next, whether the crack holds or whether it was just another performance, subscribe and hit that bell. If this series hit home, share it with someone who needs to see it. Drop a comment if you've got a story. I read every single one. And remember what the Stoics taught. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. Words mean nothing. Actions over time mean everything.